Hello, I'm Cynthia Ng. You are tuned into AWANI Review. Today we are diving into an important discussion on the topic of gender equity, diversity and inclusivity in higher education and why women leadership in higher education matters. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Ms. Prabha Sundram, Head of Education at British Council Malaysia. Thank you for coming on the show and thank you for having us at your beautiful office at British Council, Kuala Lumpur.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. Our pleasure.
Well, first of all, to start with, Prabha, the British Council had recently published a white paper on gender equity, diversity and inclusivity in higher education. This was done in collaboration with CMEO. Could you talk to us a bit more about this white paper? Why was this important to British Council and why does it matter to us?
Yeah. So, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Gender equality, diversity and inclusion is very much part of the British Council's mission. Mm-hmm. It is central to everything that we do in our programs, in our delivery, in our work with higher education institutions, in our work with communities, whether it's working with the UK higher education sector or whether it's working with the local countries where we operate in. GEDI, which is Gender Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, is also something that we try to mainstream in our program work. We do not want it to sit at the sidelines of what we do because we realize it's such a critical component of ensuring that there is a strong reason that underpins our work in terms of, projecting those values that is very much in line with the mission and vision of British Council. So the white paper actually outlines our efforts to encourage and foster leadership through GEDI, through the lens of GEDI, and because a lot of the work that we do, a lot of the work that I do as Head of Education centers around higher education, and we have this fantastic partner in CMEO RIHAD, we decided that this would be our inaugural effort to move into this area and to see how we can contribute to the discussions, to capacity building, to developing leadership in this important area.
Yeah, this is the first of its kind report and it is done across the region. Yeah. I think with some 30 plus higher education institutions.
Yeah, that's right. For the British Council, yes, it is the first and it was truly inspired by our partner, CMEO RIHAD.
Okay, now let's talk a bit more about the white paper because I read through the paper and I did find some fascinating insights. Yeah. Perhaps you could share with us more about what stood out to you, what were the interesting things that was highlighted in this white paper.
So it is a synthesis of a lot of insights that we have gathered through research. Challenges that have been identified in the area of GEDI, looking at considering how we can continuously improve in this area through collaboration, also looking at what is the progress, the current state of affairs, looking at how we can build on this collectively using platforms which perhaps the British Council, CMEO RIHAD can work together to convene, since both these organizations have got strong links in the region and with the UK. So some of the findings reaffirm some of the perceptions and some of the things that we already know, which is not a bad thing. It's always good to have affirmation. So some of the findings are things like, in Malaysia, there is a high number of women, a large number of women, more women than men actually enrolled in higher education. However, you don't see that reflected as it moves along into the C-suite and into leadership positions, whether in higher education or in the industry. So this is something that we've always been very much aware of, and I think findings from the report reaffirm that. But we also realize that there's an appetite in institutions, there's more awareness, and there is, the timing is probably quite right to pull together practitioners, academicians, students, and leaders and policymakers to discuss about how we can collectively enhance and create those kind of pathways for greater women involvement in leadership roles in higher education.
I do want to pick your point. You mentioned Malaysia. We'll go into that a bit more later. But I think it's interesting to note that globally, I think more women are enrolling in higher education institutions, earning advanced degrees. But yes, they are still underrepresented in top leadership roles. And I wonder, in the white paper, were there any indications as to why is it happening? I mean, it's not just it's not unique to higher education. I mean, looking across industries, there's still disparity. But what does the white paper tell us in terms of the disparity in higher education?
So there are several reasons, and this is something that we have long known, but the white paper, I think, highlighted these reasons. Of course, there's quite a bit of, women traditionally go into those, they are in leadership in those roles which are, a bit more stereotyped for women, maybe in education. So you would find maybe there are more women leaders in education, there are more men in disciplines like engineering and technology. But a lot of it is also to do with responsibilities. And this is not really responsibilities that are societal expectations, but it's also responsibilities where women have more of the nurturing role in a family, in a community, and they take on these responsibilities quite seriously. There's also a little bit on the opportunities. So what happens after they have fulfilled these responsibilities? Are opportunities still open for them to take on leadership roles in their chosen career? And that's where you find there is a bit of a disconnect and there's a bit of a gap.
But these things that you mentioned, these are systemic challenges across industries that we're seeing, right? So in terms of higher education, you mentioned engineering and all that as lacking of women in top leadership, which is unique, which is interesting actually, because you see more women entering
in STEM. Yes, absolutely.
STEM right now. So what's happening here, and how do you think we can move past that?
So there are initiatives. Of course, at some of the recommendations of the white paper, falling back on that, is looking at creating awareness, capacity building, providing scholarships. So speaking on scholarships, I would like to touch on an initiative, a scholarship by British Council, and more recently a collaboration with ASEAN UK SAGE, support for the advancement of girls' education, SAGE. That's called the Women in STEM Scholarship, which has been running for about 3 years. And this is a scholarship for women to pursue master's education in UK institutions which are partners in the scholarship scheme. It's full tuition coverage. It is to encourage women to go back into areas which perhaps they could not pursue due to their caregiving or nurturing responsibilities. So so there is, based on the white paper's recommendations and based on British Council's initiatives, I think there is a lot of there are a lot of avenues that we can move into to make this happen. We can convene policy dialogues with policymakers, with key stakeholders, industry partners. I think between the British Council and our convening power, UK institutions and Malaysian institutions or institutions from Southeast Asia, they all have expertise in different areas, and bringing people together to develop that kind of awareness, to develop capacity in this field of enhancing women leadership so as to move forward in their careers, whether it's STEM or any other discipline. I think that's the way forward.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I do want to get your thoughts about the impact of not having more diversity in top leadership roles, especially in higher education. Because we talk about, yes, we recognize the challenges. Yes, there's greater awareness on GEDI issues. But specific to higher education, what sort of impact can we anticipate if we do not rectify the disparity that we're seeing right now?
Maybe I'll put it the other way. I think there is a lot of innovation in diversity. When we don't have that diversity in leadership, we lose out on that innovation, we lose out on that expertise, and we lose out on that value that and perspective, very unique perspective that women leadership can bring into the sector and into the scene, whether it is in STEM or non-STEM disciplines. You need to have that diversity to to have innovation and creativity and stronger futures for students and for the sector. So I think it's really important to have that diversity, and that's something that we very much want to be a part of in terms of that conversation.
All right. Now, going back to the white paper, so this is done across the region, Southeast Asia. I do wonder, given the diverse cultural and political landscape in the different parts of Southeast Asia, was there anything specific to each country, like challenges that were specific to one country that you might not have observed in other countries? I'm just trying to get, are there examples that some countries are doing a bit better than others?
Definitely. I think in the higher education sector itself, all the countries in Southeast Asia are quite diverse. We're all at different stages. Similarly, in GEDI, there are country differences. It's bound to happen with different governments. So you do have countries where, it's already built into the country's policies, around policies around GEDI and higher education leadership for women. And there are countries where, even in Malaysia, for example, I think efforts have been made to ensure that there is 30% participation of women in higher education, in women in leadership. How that's being translated into action is where I guess we all come in and we can contribute our ideas and our thoughts. And also, it then becomes the responsibility of institutions, of national priorities and regional initiatives to translate these kind of aspirations and these kind of policies into reality. Yeah.
Were there some standout examples of success stories that you thought is noteworthy in this white paper?
As I mentioned earlier, I don't think any of the results were really surprising. I think what was really a lesson is that we do need to take this forward. So collectively, we can do more at all levels, whether it's institutional level, the national level, or the regional level. I think each party has got a responsibility. At the institutional level, there is a need for institutions to recognize that this is important. There's a need for institutions to create that kind of awareness among students and among academicians, and to provide the enabling environments within the institution. At the national level, again, we come back to policies, we come back to providing stipends and scholarships if that's at all possible, and also discourse at a national level. And at the regional level, I think is where organizations like British Council and CMURIHET can definitely play a role in convening dialogue, in developing programs that enhance capacity within institutions, within academics and within leaders, and also come together for women leaders who are already there and the top of their game in the sector to share those kind of inspirational stories. So we have done that before when, specifically when talking about the Women in STEM Scholarship, we usually, the promotion of the scholarship usually happens somewhere around March, which is in line with the International Women's Day celebrations. So we always use that opportunity to highlight successful women leaders in STEM disciplines. And Malaysia itself has been a shining example of some amazing women leaders that we have in the STEM discipline who are more than happy to share their success stories. So these are some of the initiatives that were put forward through the recommendations of the paper, but some of them we have already been doing, some of them we now need to move forward.
I do want to go back to zooming in on Malaysia for a moment from this white paper. So we have seen some progress in addressing gender equalities in universities, higher education. Of course, moving forward, there are still areas that we are falling short. Yeah. So what's your take on the progress made so far, and what more needs to be done in the Malaysian context?
For Malaysia specifically, I think there needs to be much more support provided for. I mean, we already have a high number of enrollments of women in higher education, and especially women in subjects like STEM, which are traditionally male-dominated fields. But with the right support, with the right level of understanding, flexibility, awareness, and things like stipends and scholarships and avenues to talk and discuss and share, I think there would be greater ambition and greater, what shall I say, movement of women seeking out positions of leadership with confidence in the space of higher education.
What do you think are some of the systemic barriers that is hindering the progress
of getting more women
in leadership roles, in higher education?
I think from the perspective of women, it would again fall back on are there opportunities for them to take on those positions, especially if they have been away from their discipline for a while. That is a progression issue. So I think until we look at things like, are women able to come back and pick up their career? Are they given that kind of flexibility? These are some of the conversations that are already happening with institutions that have been involved in the study.
Okay, and based on your feedback, you've worked with so many institutions. What did they say about this white paper? What has been the response to it, to the findings of this white paper?
So it's been we are still at the initial stage of socializing this white paper with institutions. So we've had a few workshops. We have brought in some experts who are very much a part of the insights gathering and analysis in the white paper. So Simeo Raihad has been instrumental, working very closely with the British Council in doing this. We still have a long way to go, and it would be exciting to see where this leads us, because as I said, it's very much embedded in our mission for the British Council. We do want to ensure that our programs have GEDI at the heart of what we do. So moving forward, I think it would definitely, we would definitely be looking at incorporating a lot of these elements and recommendations much more deeply, embedding them into our program delivery when we talk about higher education partnerships, when we talk about scholarships, when we talk about working on alumni, our work with alumni, and also our work in connecting higher education institutions, whether it's in the UK or in the country where we are.
Prabha, you've been in the education sector for a very, very long time, and I do wonder, when we talk about implementing changes, naturally there could be resistance, existing resistance from organizations. And I do wonder your thoughts about, how do we push that conversation forward when some people view that, hey, why change things? Why disrupt what we already have in place for years?
Okay, so I'll speak from the Malaysian context. So in my years of experience in the higher education sector, working with Malaysian universities, so I used to actually work in a Malaysian university many years ago, and now I work at the British Council, where I still work with Malaysian institutions and connecting them to UK institutions. What I found is that there is actually a lot of interest in internationalization. There's a lot of interest in collaboration, but it's about how you approach it. So it's not about the two parties, one party telling the other what to do or how to do it. It's about the two parties coming together and working on something that they're both passionate about and seeing how they can learn from each other. So it's more on knowledge sharing. It's more on collaborating for mutual benefit and mutual interest. So I think a lot of this is about how we approach this brokering and connecting. So when in Malaysia, for example, it's a market. It's a very mature higher education market. Malaysia positions itself as a higher education hub, which the UK recognizes. Malaysia is one of the priority markets for the UK, and there are countless number of collaborations between the UK and Malaysia, and this would continue because of the approach. In 2023, UK and Malaysia signed a Memorandum of Understanding for collaborations in higher education, cuts across all areas of research, of student mobility, of teaching and learning, recognition of qualifications. So we are still, working on some of these areas, and we're really excited, that there is so much of support and there's so much of interest in higher education collaborations between the two countries. So again, as I said, I don't see it as a challenge. I see it as an approach. So if you approach it from a perspective of these are two partners who have a lot to offer and complement in terms of what they bring to the collaboration, then definitely you're not going to look at resistance. You're going to be looking at a really fruitful partnership.
Okay. Yeah. And what do you hope to look forward to with in respect to the higher education space and when it comes to women leadership?
I'm hoping that through our work that the British Council does with our partners like CME or IHAD, we work on a variety of programs. We work on a program called Going Global Partnerships, which brings institutions together to collaborate on areas which are shared priority. We work on areas where we can enhance and support alumni, Malaysians who have studied in the UK or studied for UK qualifications. We can showcase them as examples of leadership, and we do have many in Malaysia. In the last 10 years, we've had over 80,000 Malaysians who have graduated with UK degrees, and many among them are women who are now in leadership positions. So I'm hoping that we can actually showcase some of our UK alumni to inspire younger generations to move into the space of leadership. We can bring UK institutions who are interested in progressing on this area and championing the area of GEDI. We can bring them together in projects that actually explore in depth into gender equality, diversity, and inclusion, and probably develop some capacity development programs.
Really? All right. Yeah. Now, I've been focusing a lot about gender aspect of leadership and also gender perspective in higher education. But the white paper, I understand, also addresses other intersectional vulnerabilities, for example, race or disability as one of those areas. So could you share a bit more about how the findings of the white paper with regards to that? And also, how do you think universities can improve their approach, with respect to these other areas of equality and diversity?
So intersectionality is a really important part of understanding the whole GEDI landscape, and we have always realized that we can't just look at it through just the lens of gender. There is also things like geographical reach, which impact various progressions, especially when talking about leadership. By examining further, so white paper touches on this quite briefly, but there's a lot more work to be done in examining the impact of these intersectionalities and how they actually translate into impacting leadership in higher education. But whatever we look at and whatever we examine, it would lead towards a positive change, because it is important for universities to create that kind of space where they are inclusive, and considering things like disability and gender and the intersectionality would enhance that student appeal that they have. It would enhance, increase the reputation of that institution as a university that pays attention to equality, diversity, inclusion, and widening participation. And it would also bring the university closer to communities, which is a very important part of a lot of the research that the university does. So it does have a multiple levels of impact on the institution. So it's definitely something that institutions do need to consider, and we do need to consider as we move forward.
Okay. Now, just a final question before we wrap things up. There's definitely more awareness on GDI issues these days, but I do wonder, in your opinion, what are some actionable steps that universities and higher education institutions can take to improve the landscape of GDI in Southeast Asia?
I think there needs to be much more discourse and dialogue in this area. So this is probably, the white paper is probably a start and a really good platform to sort of spur this conversation. And the white paper has got, many recommendations at all levels. So we can use some of these findings. None of them are set in stone. This is an initial inaugural effort. So we can use this white paper and some of the recommendations as the basis to convene and bring people together at different levels, whether they are at leadership level, whether they are at student level, whether they are academics or policymakers. Bring people together to discuss and share their views and ideas. We can also use this, as I mentioned earlier, in enhancing programs that we are doing at the British Council, and institutions are embedding within their respective curriculum and teaching and learning. So that's an entirely different area, which we've not even, obviously that would be something institutions would have to do, but perhaps it can be an area where institutions can collaborate and work together with the UK, with other countries in Southeast Asia, to share their best practices and to see how they can collectively improve and learn from each other.
All right, well, thank you so much, Prabha, for sharing your insights and the findings of this white paper by British Council and in partnership with CIMIO. Thank you so much, Prabha, once again, and we look forward to more great work from the British Council. Thanks for coming on the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.